Hello. Today we're going to cover how to make a cell shader in UE4 and 5. We will actually be making this in Unreal 5, but all of this should be applicable within UE4. It's going to be a fairly simple material where we're just going to use a little bit of mass to create that step effect. But yeah, with that said, let's get into the tutorial. Alright, so let's first just get rid of this effect that I've already got in the scene. So if we just get rid of that and go into your folder and we right click and create a material, and we call it m_cell shader. And before we go into it, if we right click and create a material instance like this, and if we go back to our post-process volume and go all the way down to post-process materials and click on choose, set reference, and then if we drag that instance into there, whatever we do now in our material will now affect the environment. So now if we save all of that, we open up our shader like this here, and now we can do some work in our material. Sick. So the first thing we need to do is change the material domain. So if we go to the little drop down on surface under material domain and select post process, it will come up black, and that's because we don't have any data in here yet and we need to reference the render data from our scene. If you go up to the little lit icon and go down to buffer visualization and then click on overview, you'll see all of these little screens here, and this is all the passes that Unreal uses to make up this image, and we can call all of these within the material by using the node scene texture. So if we put that back to lit and open this guy up like this, and if we right click and create a scene texture like this and put it to post process input 0 and chuck that guy into there and apply, you'll see that your scene goes back to normal. Sweet. So now if we open up this guy, we now need to calculate our new lighting for the cell shading. And the way we're going to do that is if we give ourselves a wee bit of room and we duplicate this guy down here and grab ourselves the base color as stored in gbuffer like this, and we're going to desaturate them, both nodes, like this. Cool. And if we divide the both of them, this should be the black and white shading of the scene. Now you might notice this sort of jitter effect, and we'll solve this by going back into your material, clicking on the empty space, going all the way down to the bottom here, and under blendable location, if we change it from after tone mapping to before translucency and press apply, that should solve that. Sick. So now all we need to do is put this through a sort of calculation to produce a sort of stepping effect. So the first thing we need to create here is an if statement. So if we open this guy up properly and create an if like this, and we just put this guy into the if for now, like here, and don't worry about the error. And out of the B channel, we're going to create a constant. So if you left click and press 1 on your keyboard and put a 1 value in there for now. And in the A value, if we connect that up to the top one here from the post-process input 0, and we just neaten that up a little bit like this. And for the A is more than B, if we multiply this by itself, but just before here, if we clamp this, just in case it's more than the value we need, so it should be between 0 and 2, like this. Just neaten this guy up a wee bit again, like here. And now all we need to do is figure out what's going to be equal to B and what's less than B. So if we push this down here a little bit, we're first going to add in the specularity in the scene. So if we duplicate this down here twice, and on the top one, if we change this to spec for lighting, and in the bottom one, if we make this metallic, like this, and if we pull out the specular and saturate it, and then we multiply this by a factor of roughly 6, and we chuck this into a lerp, into the B channel, and change the A channel to 1, And then we're going to use the metallic value to mask this. So if we pull it here and saturate like this, and you fire that into the alpha, what this means is anything that's metallic will then in the scene be calculated via the specularity, but it's multiplied by 6, so it's a little bit more extreme. And anything that isn't metallic is pure white. So now if we drag out here and multiply this like this, and make this the B channel, and if we put divide into here, and make a little reroute node here for now, and we pull out the multiply and lerp this, we're going to give ourselves a little bit more control here. So if we put this to the B channel, and then this one goes into the A channel, just like this, and we pull it here and create a saturate, and then we connect that up to the is less than B and is equal to B. Now all we need to do is create a little parameter here so we can turn the specularity on and off, depending on what you want for your game. So if you left click and press S and type in spec light like this, and put the default to 1 and put the max to 1, chuck that guy into alpha, that should be us. Now if we go into our scene and we open up our instance like this, and we play about with our spec value now, you should see that the specularity is now affected by our material. Sick. So now if we go back in, and we just give ourselves a little bit more space, like this, and we comment this and say this is the lighting. Cool. Now all we need to do is chuck this through a sort of calculation to give us the sort of step effect. So if we drag out here and put it through a power, and give ourselves a little parameter here and call it step scale, and put this to 0.9 like this, and this is all going to go into a lerp. So if we create a lerp and connect this guy up like this so that we can do all of our calculations in the middle. Cool. So if we drag out the power and then multiply, and then we floor this and then divide this, what we're going to do is create a parameter here just like before, and we're going to call this steps. Maybe put in like 5-ish, and we're going to multiply the value, floor it, and then divide it by the same value, and this should give us our step sort of effect. Cool. So now we need to saturate this and stick that into the B channel of the lerp. So now we need to figure out the alpha channel. So if we go along here and out of the power we create a multiply, floor that, and just in between these nodes if we create a little saturate for safety like this, and give ourselves a little parameter over here, let's say step offset, and we give it the value of 3 for now, and we fire this into our alpha, and we will see that our preview is starting to look a little bit different. So if we save and apply, and then we go into the scene, you'll notice we actually have our cell shading stripe kind of effect, which is pretty cool. Sick. And you know what's also kind of sick? I'm working on a game called Button Pop. If you guys are interested in the game at all, I'd really appreciate it if you go check it out on Steam and wishlist it. And I really appreciate your guys' feedback. So if you want to see something in particular in the game, like your own hat or your own button or something like that, leave a comment down below. And with that said, let's get back to the tutorial. So if we go back into the material and give ourselves even more space and comment this and call it steps, and if we chuck these guys into a little group, call it steps, that will neaten things up. Now the next thing we need to do is calculate the color, but just before we do that, we're going to create a power and then a multiply. I'm going to multiply it by 1.5 and keep the power at 2. And the reason for this is it's just going to solve a few of the little issues with the color later on preemptively. So don't worry too much about this. Alright, so if we get some empty space here and we create a lerp we're going to lerp between the shadow color and the scene color, but kind of toonified, if you want to say. And we're going to mask this with our steps calculation. So if we just chuck this guy into there, like that. And for our shadow color, if we create a 3 vectors, so if we left click and press 3 at the same time, it'll give you your 3 vector. And if you right click and convert to a parameter and call this shadow color, and connect this guy up to the A. And I tend to make this like a sort of bluey purpley color. So if we make it 0.0999 in the red, and then a 0.127 in the green, and a 0.237 for the blue, you'll get this kind of color. That's what I usually use. And if we just come along a little bit here and right click and type in scene texture like this, and we make this into a post process input 0, and we drag out and we normalize it, this will give us the pure color of the scene with a lot less of the shading involved in it. But we can control this a little bit. So if we either multiply, or even you can lerp it if you like, by a parameter. So if we make a parameter here and call this normalize color, and if we make this a number between 1 and 2 usually is best. So we can just stick in 1.5 for now. And a little trick that I use is that I multiply this by the base color. So if I duplicate this up here, and we find the base color for lighting, and we desaturate this, and we multiply this here by roughly 5 or something like that, and we saturate that and stick that into the multiply, that will just kind of give it an extra pop to it. So now if we saturate this and mask it to the RGB value like that, and chuck that guy into the B, we should now be able to connect this up to our end result. And if we compile and save this and go into the scene, you basically have a very simple cell shader. And you can play about with these values a little bit if you like, change the color, step values, all that sort of stuff. But if we go back into our material and we open that up, we can add some little details here that really add a lot of functionality to the material. So if we comment this and say color, and we put these guys under the group color like this, and if we add a little lerp here and chuck this guy into here for now, and then put that into that lerp, just expand this up, and if we create 2 parameters here, one of them should be called shadow min, duplicate that, and the other one should be called shadow max, and just put the max to 1 for now, and put that into B, put that into A. And what this will allow you to do is control how powerful the shadows are in the scene. Now, another cool trick that I usually use in a lot of my projects is that I like to blend this with either the base color for the sort of pure scene color, and also blend it with the base render. So if we drag over here a little bit and we right click and create a scene texture like this, and we drop this down and go to texture color as stored in gbuffer like this, and if we drag out and mask this to the RGB, and if we create alert by pressing L and left clicking, and we connect this guy up here like that, and if we pull this guy into the B and chuck this guy into the A, and if we create a little parameter here and call it Toon blend, and just stick it to 1 and put the max to 1 as well, and chuck that into the alpha, and if we just duplicate this along and do the exact same, just put that into the output and this into the B, but this time if we change this one to the post-process input 0, and we rename this one to base blend, like this, and we apply and save, and we have a look in our scene and have a look at the instance here. What this will allow us to do is we activate these guys like here. If we pull this down, we'll go back to our normal scene render, which is kind of cool. And then also, if we just put that back up, we can also blend between our material render and the base color. So what I tend to do in a lot of my projects is that I like a sort of a blend between it rather than it just being so harsh. So if we put it to like 0.9, you know, something more like this, which is kind of cool. But again, that's really just up to you and your project. So if we go back into our material again and open this guy up, a couple of other things that we can do is add in ambient occlusion on top of this and also mask it depending on, you know, if you need it for a character or the whole world or whatever you need. So if we just push this guy along a wee bit here and we create a multiply and we chuck this guy into the multiply here like this. And if we create a scene texture again, and you look for ambient occlusion, and if we drag out here and mask it to the red, and we chuck this into lerp, and for this tutorial we're just going to do a min and max, but you could even like put color onto the AO quite easily here. So the min max way is that if you just create a parameter and we call it AO min, stick that into A, and then duplicate that and make a max like this, and the max should be 1. Cool. So essentially what this allows you to do is with the max value, this is how intense the base render is, which is this, and the minimum value will control how intense or even how dark the AO is. Cool, so if you do actually want to apply some color onto this, all you need to do is right click, create a lerp, like this, and instead of multiplying it, we can chuck this guy into a saturate, like this, and then into the alpha. And if we connect this guy up to the B, which is the white value, which is the strongest and max value here, and we connect this guy up like this, and then all we need to do, if we get rid of this, all we need to do is create a 3 vector, so left click and press 3. And if we just make this a color for now, you can make this a parameter if you like into your material, but for this tutorial we'll just make it a color, so let's say green, like this. Chuck this guy in here, and you'll see this kind of glow here. So if we apply this and then go back into our scene, you'll notice that we have full control over our AO, like this, which is kind of cool, and obviously it's the color that we want. So if we go back in here and make it, let's say black, which is like your normal sort of AO color, apply that. Yeah, sick. This will also be affected by our post-process settings, so if we go in here and type in ambient occlusion, you'll see that is affected, so it's kind of up to you if you need that in your material or not. So if we go back in here, we can start masking this out depending on the object as well. So if we copy this guy over and we change it to a custom stencil, we drag out and we divide by 255 like this, and we drag out here and mask it just to the red channel, and we pull out here and create a bit mask like this, and we want to create a constant, so 1 and click. And for this tutorial I'm going to put it to 200, but you could put it to any value within 255, like down here. And if we stick that into the bit here and we create a lerp and chuck this into the alpha, and then put this to the output and this as A. And all we need to do now is get the post-process input 0. So if we change that there, mask this to RGB. If you don't mask it, it will give you an error. Like this. If we apply, save. The only thing you're going to have to do to make sure this actually works in your scene is you'll have to go into your project settings and type in custom depth, and you'll have an option called custom depth stencil pass. And as standard, it might be set to enabled. You'll need to set it to enabled with stencil. So if you click that and then go back to your scene, it should be working. And you'll notice that this ball, among some other objects, is not rendered in the cell shader kind of style. And that's because if you go to the search function in the details panel and type in custom depth, you'll see that custom depth is ticked on. If I click it off, it goes back to cell shading. If you click it on, and because it's also set to 200, it will not be included in this pass. But if you set it to another number like 201, it includes it. Now you might need this to be the other way around. Like let's say you want the whole world to be realistic, but then just an object to not be. What you could do is just reverse this. So in your lerp, I'll just pull this down a wee bit. If we just put this value to the B and the post-process 0 to the A, and we apply, the whole world is realistic except for the object with the custom depth on, which is pretty sick. Now just one little tip to go forward with this. This goes really well with outline material. I have made a tutorial in the past going over how to make one. If you want to see that, go check out this link. But if you've got your own one, you can plug it in right here in your post-process materials array. But it does look pretty snazzy, to be fair. Also, just in the topic of outline materials, I will be looking into a more advanced sort of outline material where we can include all the details in your characters and textures and stuff like that. So if that's something you'd be interested in, keep an eye on the channel. But yeah, I think that's the end of this tutorial. I'm currently working on a game called Button Pop. If you're interested in the game at all, I'd really appreciate it if you check it out on Steam and wishlist it. I've got a number of devlogs up now, so go have a look. I really just appreciate your guys' feedback, so if you want to see anything in particular in the game, like your own button or a hat or something like that, leave a comment down below. But yeah, I guess I'll see you guys later. Bye!